Now, whether it was that story that we were just discussing about guide dogs or any of the stories on the front of the newspapers this morning, there have been a relentless series of negative news stories in recent years, whether it be the pandemic, cost of living crisis, war in Ukraine, and now all this political turmoil. So unsurprisingly, lots of us have been feeling quite emotional.
Yeah, it's had an impact on a lot of people's mental health. New research shows people are feeling lonely, isolated, anxious and stressed. So what can you do if you are struggling with negative news?
Well, Vicki Nash is head of policy for the mental charity Mind, and she joins us now. And the first thing I don't want you to say is turn off the news, because I know a lot of my friends say, I've stopped watching the news because it's so negative. We don't want you to do that. We just need to come up with coping strategies, because the reason we need to watch the news is because it's real, it's happening. We need to be engaged with the real world. We just need to cope better.
Absolutely. There is a balance here to be struck, isn't there? So we're not suggesting that anyone should be switching off the news. We need to be aware of what's going on in the world, and we're living the news. These are not normal times: political turmoil, cost of living crisis, wars, and so what we're really saying is you need to know how you need to cope as an individual. So for me, sometimes I will kind of just take time out and not be kind of doom scrolling through Twitter. But then other times I'll feel a bit more kind of able to kind of cope with that. And so it's about trying to work out what's right for you, but also talking to family and friends and keeping that contact with people to talk about it. And that helps us to process and work out, what it all means to us as individuals.
Yeah, that's really interesting what you said about scrolling through Twitter, because the thing about social media is it's made to deliberately make us addicted to us, to keep scrolling. That's why they added the scrolling feature in the first place. Difficult to wean yourself off that addiction.
It really is, and it's about knowing where your limit is, I think, actually. So as I was saying, I quite often will just take myself off it, and when it just all becomes a bit too much, but then I'll come back onto it, because actually social media and news channels are really important in helping us kind of keep in contact with what's going on in the world. So it's about getting the right balance and knowing when it's becoming a bit too overwhelming. At the moment, overwhelming feels quite a normal feeling to have. There's so much going on. It's about when that starts to really impact on your day-to-day life that you need to kind of take a break and maybe not switch off, but switch on less.
Yeah, I suppose if you think of it as sort of like gears in a car, if we're always in this kind of emergency, high cortisol, stress, overwhelm mode, it's going to take its toll eventually. For me, because obviously doing the job we do, and I do sometimes get upset by the negativity of it all, I find nature really helps me, and I like a big expansive sky. So whether that means walking along by the river or just seeing the sky somehow just helps me rebalance. Is nature a really useful tool in all of this?
I'm so pleased you brought up nature. It's absolutely critical, whether that's being out in the open air, in green space. It makes such a difference to kind of our well-being and how we feel. And what's really good, I mean, it's great to do that by yourself, but it's also really great to do that with others. And the work that we've been doing with the co-op and with our colleagues in Sam H and Inspire have all been about kind of funding these projects which help bring people together who may be feeling isolated and feeling lonely, to do exactly that. There's some brilliant projects. I was just visiting a project up in Norfolk where people were going out and they have kind of facilitated nature walks or kind of food, growing your own food, and all of those things being at one with nature, with other people. It's that combination that can really make a difference to lots of people and build that resilience so that we can cope with life's ups and downs more than if we were by ourselves.
Yeah, some commentators were looking at the Prime Minister sitting in the Commons the other day behind Jeremy Hunt while he was making his statement, and some speculating that maybe she's under a bit of stress at the moment. What would be your tips for her?
Well, I think they're the tips for everyone, and we know from past research that politicians and MPs and ministers are just as likely to kind of develop mental health problems as other people. I think the principles are the same. It's really important that you have a good support network around you and that you talk to your friends and your family about what you're dealing with and how you're having to cope, but also about being able to seek help when you need it. Our website has loads of information on it, mind.org.uk, and that's available for anyone, politicians, non-politicians, through every walks of life. We all need a little help sometimes, a little help from our friends, and also from those professional organisations, and we're willing to kind of help. And there's lots of information out there for people who need that additional support.
Well, exactly. We are only human. Even Liz Truss, even Boris Johnson, when they're in these predicaments, they are, at the end of the day, human beings. And, of course, their mental health as vulnerable to all of these things as ours. Really interesting to get your take. Vicki Nash, Head of Policy at Mind. Thank you very much.